Alan Jackson was more than a country music star. For millions of fans, his voice became the soundtrack to love, heartbreak, faith, and the simple moments that define everyday life. Across more than 3 decades, he sold over 60 million records and earned 35 #1 hits, securing his place among the greatest names in country music. Yet behind the fame and success stood a man facing struggles few ever saw. A marriage that survived decades of challenges, mistakes, forgiveness, and the difficult journey back to trust. A body that slowly began to fail, testing the strength and faith of a man admired for his resilience. Success built his reputation, but adversity revealed his character. Beyond the spotlight was a story far deeper than awards and chart records, a story of endurance, devotion, and the courage to keep moving forward when life becomes its hardest. As we look back on his remarkable journey, you'll discover not only a legendary performer, but a husband, a fighter, and a man whose greatest triumph was learning how to endure. And if Alan Jackson's story speaks to your own experiences of loss, hope, or perseverance, share your thoughts below. Sometimes the memories we share become the legacy that keeps a voice alive. On a crisp fall day in 1958, in the unassuming community of Newnan, Georgia, the story of one of country music's most enduring voices quietly began with the birth of Alan Eugene Jackson. The youngest of 5 children, Alan grew up in a humble household that had once served as his grandfather's tool shed. Though small and crowded, it was a place built on perseverance, where the smell of machine oil lingered and the sounds of hard work echoed through every corner. His father, Joseph, earned a living at the Ford assembly plant, spending long hours repairing engines, while his mother, Ruth, devoted herself to caring for and guiding generations of school children. Inside that modest home, Alan learned the values that would shape his character for life: humility, determination, and the quiet strength required to endure hardship. Sunday mornings brought a different kind of rhythm. The gospel music that filled the local church drifted into the Jackson household, carrying messages of faith, comfort, and resilience. Those hymns left a lasting mark on young Alan, teaching him that music could heal wounds, express hidden emotions, and give voice to experiences that words alone could not capture. Later, when he discovered the music of Hank Williams Jr. and John Anderson, he felt an immediate connection. Their songs spoke honestly about heartache, longing, and everyday struggles, the same realities that surrounded him in small-town Georgia. Everything changed when Alan was 16 years old. His parents gave him a modest $50 guitar, an ordinary instrument that would ultimately alter the course of his life. Beneath its simple appearance lay endless possibilities. The guitar became more than an object. It became a guide, leading him towards stories waiting to be told, and dreams extending far beyond the walls of the shed where he was raised. For the first time, the young man sensed that his future might reach far beyond Newnan, even if neither he nor the country music world yet understood where that path would lead. The following year, Alan experienced his first taste of performing when he appeared in his high school production of Oklahoma. The stage was modest and the setting far from glamorous, but the experience awakened something powerful within him. After graduating, reality arrived quickly. Like many young men from working-class families, he took whatever jobs he could find, driving freight, selling shoes, and repairing equipment to make ends meet. Yet no matter how demanding the days became, music continued calling him back each night, refusing to release its hold on his imagination. Eventually, he joined forces with several friends to form a band called Dixie Steel. They spent years playing in bars, dance halls, and small venues scattered throughout the South. Audiences were often sparse, money was unpredictable, and every performance required loading and unloading equipment long after midnight. Still, those difficult years were laying the foundation for something far greater. Hidden within those smoky rooms and roadside stages was the beginning of a remarkable career that had not yet revealed itself to the world. Many evenings ended with little reward beyond exhaustion and the hope that the next performance might finally open a door. By then, music had become more than a hobby or escape. For Alan, it represented a chance to build a life larger than anything he had known growing up in Georgia. In 1985, he made the decision that separates those who dream from those willing to risk everything. Leaving Noonan behind with only a few possessions and unwavering determination, he headed for Nashville, the heart of country music and a city notorious for testing aspiring artists. The reality was far tougher than the dream. Alan and his wife Denise lived in a small apartment furnished with only what they could afford. To pay the bills, Alan worked in the mailroom of the Nashville network, while Denise spent long hours working as a flight attendant. Each month brought new financial pressures, and success remained uncertain. Then, an unexpected encounter changed the direction of their lives. During a routine flight, Denise recognized country music star Glen Campbell, one of Alan's greatest inspirations. Summoning her courage, she shared her husband's dream with him. Campbell listened carefully and responded by giving her his business card, encouraging Alan to get in touch. What seemed like a simple gesture would prove to be a life-changing opportunity. That connection opened doors to influential publishers and producers who immediately recognized the sincerity and authenticity in Alan's music. Years later, he would still speak gratefully about Campbell's role in his journey, acknowledging how much he owed the legendary performer for believing in him when few others did. The breakthrough came quickly afterward. In 1989, Alan became the very first artist signed to the newly established Arista Nashville label. Soon after, he released his debut album, Here in the Real World, introducing listeners to a songwriter whose music was deeply rooted in honesty, humility, and Southern tradition. One particularly meaningful moment symbolized how far he had come. Glen Campbell stood beside him when he received his first gold record, bringing their story full circle. Throughout the 1990s, Alan evolved from a promising newcomer into one of country music's dominant figures. Albums such as Who I Am and High Mileage achieved tremendous success, while songs like Chattahoochee, Livin' on Love, and Gone Country became staples of American radio. Inspiration often arrived unexpectedly. The hit Don't Rock the Jukebox, for example, emerged after a malfunctioning jukebox in Virginia created a moment that instantly sparked an idea in his mind. Yet as his popularity grew, so did his resistance to the changing direction of the industry. While Nashville increasingly embraced polished pop influences, Alan remained committed to traditional country music. Admirers praised him as a protector of the genre's heritage, while critics sometimes viewed him as unwilling to adapt. His dedication to authenticity reached a defining moment in 2000 when he joined George Strait on Murder on Music Row, a song that challenged the industry for prioritizing commercial appeal over genuine country roots. Then came September 11th, 2001. Early that morning, Alan woke at 4 a.m. with a melody that refused to leave him. Fearing he might forget it, he hurried to his writing room and began capturing the thoughts forming in his mind, words that would soon resonate with millions of grieving Americans. Before Denise and their daughters left for Sunday school, that melody had transformed into a complete song. Where were you when the world stopped turning was not the result of careful planning or deliberate calculation. Instead, it seemed to emerge naturally from the sorrow and confusion that followed the tragedy, arriving almost as if it had chosen Alan to tell its story. By that stage of his life, Alan Jackson represented far more than a successful recording artist. He had become a voice for ordinary people, expressing the emotions, fears, hopes, and resilience that often go unspoken. His journey served as a powerful reminder that a single act of faith, a chance meeting, or even one business card offered at the right moment can alter the course of an entire lifetime. When the CMA Awards arrived in 2001, Alan stepped into the spotlight carrying more than a guitar. His hands trembled slightly, and beneath the bright stage lights, he whispered a quiet prayer to himself. Then, for 5 unforgettable minutes, an entire arena seemed to stop breathing. There were no elaborate productions, no dramatic effects, just a man standing alone with his instrument, giving voice to the pain of a nation still struggling to understand its wounds. When the final note drifted into silence, the crowd remained motionless. The stillness that followed felt almost sacred. By the next morning, interest in Alan had surged so dramatically that his website crashed under the flood of visitors searching for his name. Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning remained at #1 for 5 consecutive weeks, earned 3 ACM awards, and brought him the first Grammy Award of his career. Looking back, Alan would say simply, "I just hope it brought someone peace." In time, the song's lyrics were preserved by Congress, securing its place in American history. The years that followed only strengthened his legacy without changing the man himself. Drive, released in 2002, wrapped listeners in memories of simpler days, while Precious Memories in 2006 began as a deeply personal project created for his mother. What started as a private expression of faith unexpectedly grew into one of the most cherished gospel albums of his career. Beyond the music, Alan became an unlikely fashion figure. During an interview with GQ, he joked about his collection of custom-made boots, including the famous red pair he wore while water skiing in the Chattahoochee video. Yet the trademark hat he rarely removed carried a far more personal story. As a boy, he had crashed through a glass door, leaving a scar across his forehead. What began as a way to hide that mark gradually evolved into a symbol of his identity. Over the years, he shaped the brim himself, creating a silhouette so distinctive that fans could recognize him instantly, even from the farthest seats in a packed stadium. Through every chapter, the music never stopped. Albums such as Good Time, Freight Train, and Where Have You Gone added new pages to the story he had been telling for decades. Whenever people questioned his commitment to traditional country music, his response remained unchanged. "I came here to sing real country music. It's who I am." Those words were less a statement than a promise he never abandoned. Running alongside his professional success was another story equally important to him: his marriage to Denise. Their journey began in 1976, when an 18-year-old Alan, armed with little more than confidence and a crooked smile, tossed a coin toward a young woman working behind an ice cream counter. It was a small, impulsive gesture, but it sparked a relationship neither of them could have imagined would last a lifetime. Alan wasted no time pursuing her. Not long after that first encounter, he surprised Denise by hiding in the back seat of her car and suddenly appearing when she started the engine. Her shocked laughter marked the beginning of something special. Before long, they were spending every chance they had together, sharing soft drinks on warm evenings, lingering in parked cars for hours beneath the glow of dashboard lights, and imagining futures much bigger than the boundaries of their small Georgia hometown. Their romance was built on simple moments, yet those moments felt priceless. Then, on Christmas Eve 2 years later, Alan nervously presented a modest engagement ring. As holiday lights shimmered around them, Denise accepted through tears and a smile, unaware that their commitment would one day be tested in ways neither could foresee. In 1979, they exchanged vows in a small wedding filled with warmth rather than extravagance. The early years of marriage were anything but easy. Denise worked tirelessly as a teacher before later becoming a flight attendant, while Alan sorted mail in the basement of the Nashville network and spent nights performing in small bars for modest paychecks. They were often exhausted, but they shared an unshakable belief that music might eventually create a brighter future. Eventually, they built a life together on a modest farm in Franklin, Tennessee. There, surrounded by horses, growing trees, and open fields, they found a sense of peace. The laughter of their daughters echoed through the property, and Alan taught them how to drive an old pickup truck across the land. Weekends revolved around fishing trips, muddy boots, and long conversations over glasses of sweet tea. Those experiences later found their way into songs like Drive for Daddy Jean, reflecting how deeply his music was rooted in real life rather than manufactured in a studio. But success often comes with hidden costs. As Alan's fame exploded throughout the 1990s, constant touring and public attention gradually created distance between husband and wife. Denise watched as the demands of stardom pulled him farther away, bringing temptations neither of them had anticipated. In 1998, the foundation of their marriage cracked when Alan admitted he had been unfaithful. The revelation shattered Denise's world, leading to what she would later describe as a period when she felt she had completely lost herself. Yet rather than walk away, she turned toward faith and reflection. Over time, she came to understand that love sometimes requires forgiveness instead of escape. Alan, meanwhile, found no happiness in what had happened. The affair left him consumed by regret and disappointment. Determined to save the marriage, he committed himself to counseling, honesty, and the difficult work of rebuilding trust. The road back was neither quick nor easy. Healing came through patience, humility, and consistent effort. They chose each other again, not because the pain disappeared, but because the foundation beneath their relationship proved stronger than the storm that threatened to destroy it. Their daughters, Mattie, Alexandra, and Danny, became a constant reminder of what truly mattered, and their family home gradually transformed into a place where forgiveness took root and matured into a deeper, quieter form of love. To Alan, his daughters represented far more than family. They served as daily reminders of the man he wanted to become. They grounded him when success threatened to pull him away, softened his rough edges, and gave purpose to the endless miles spent on tour. Their laughter, bedtime conversations, and peaceful mornings around the breakfast table eventually found their way into songs such as Drive for Daddy Jean and Remember When. Through those recordings, he celebrated the ordinary miracles of family life. Mud-covered boots by the door, whispered prayers, sleepy smiles, and the silent commitments that hold a family together through every challenge. As their marriage slowly recovered, the wounds of the past evolved into something stronger. Their relationship became less about passion and more about trust, patience, respect, and emotional honesty. Then, one Christmas Eve, Denise gave Alan a gift that perfectly captured their shared history. Waiting beneath the lights was a beautifully restored 1955 Ford Thunderbird, the very first car he had ever owned. As a teenager, Alan had worked tirelessly to purchase that car, and driving it home had felt like freedom itself. Years later, when he and Denise were newly married and struggling financially, he sold it to help fund the down payment on their first house. Denise never forgot the quiet sadness that accompanied that sacrifice. Without telling him, she spent months tracking registration records and searching old documents until she finally located the original vehicle. When she handed him the keys and revealed its remarkable journey back to him, Alan was overcome with emotion. The gift was never really about the car. It was a tribute to memory, sacrifice, gratitude, and a wife who never stopped seeing the hopeful young dreamer hidden beneath the successful man. For a while, life seemed to settle into a calmer rhythm. Professional achievements continued to accumulate, yet home remained the steady center of everything. Then, in 2010, another challenge arrived without warning. Denise, the woman who had endured heartbreak, rebuilt a marriage, and devoted herself to raising their daughters, received devastating news. She had been diagnosed with cervical cancer. In 2010, life delivered a challenge far greater than any chart battle or sold-out arena. Denise Jackson was diagnosed with cervical cancer, 2 words capable of changing everything in an instant. Suddenly, success felt meaningless. Chemotherapy drained her strength, thinned her hair, and filled their days with hospital visits, medications, and uncertainty. The home they had built together became a place of whispered prayers and anxious waiting. For Alan, there was no stage large enough, no applause loud enough to ease the pain of watching the woman he loved suffer. He stepped back from much of the spotlight, choosing treatment rooms and hospital chairs over fame, determined to be beside her through every difficult moment. Out of that fear came one of his most personal songs. When I Saw You Leaving was not written for radio success, but as a raw expression of love, grief, and vulnerability. While Alan poured his emotions into music, Denise fought with extraordinary courage. Supported by her husband and daughters, she endured the treatments, and slowly, the darkness began to lift. The therapy ended, the scans improved, and hope returned to the Jackson household. Yet hardship was not finished with the family. In 2018, tragedy struck when their eldest daughter, Mattie, lost her husband, Ben Seligman, following a sudden accident. Despite receiving urgent medical care, Ben passed away at just 28 years old. The loss devastated Mattie and deeply wounded the entire family. But rather than allowing grief to define her future, she transformed it into purpose, founding a charity dedicated to helping widows and families facing crisis. From heartbreak came compassion, and from loss came a mission to help others survive their own pain. Then, in 2021, Alan revealed a struggle he had quietly carried for years. He announced that he was living with Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease, a progressive neurological disorder that gradually weakens the body and affects balance and movement. Fans who had noticed him appearing less steady on stage finally understood the truth. "If you see me stumble," he explained, "This is the battle I face every day." There is no cure for the disease, only treatments that help manage its progression. Yet one remarkable gift remains untouched: his voice. Through cancer, bereavement, and chronic illness, the Jackson family discovered that love is not something fragile. It is forged through hardship. Fame could not protect them from suffering, but it could not break them either. Decades after first falling in love, Alan and Denise continued honoring the promise they made as teenagers, to face life together no matter what arrived. Today, Alan still looks toward the future with cautious hope. Emerging scientific research has offered encouraging possibilities for Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease, opening doors that once seemed permanently closed. Though the condition continues to progress and simple movements require greater effort, he refuses to let it define his final years. Every step may be more difficult now, but whenever he walks onto a stage, something familiar returns. His body may struggle, yet his voice remains strong. "I'll keep singing as long as breath allows," he said. "It's the only life I ever wanted." Standing beside him is Denise, now serving as the steady support he once provided for her. Having survived her own battle with cancer, she understands the fears hidden behind his smile. Her devotion is not dramatic, but constant, strengthened by decades of forgiveness, resilience, and shared trials. Together, they embody a lesson they could never have understood when they first met as teenagers. Vows gain their true meaning only after they survive adversity. Over more than 3 decades, Alan Jackson became far more than a country music star. As the industry chased changing trends, he remained committed to traditional country values: steel guitars, fiddle melodies, and stories drawn from ordinary lives. Some critics called him stubborn, but millions saw him as a guardian of country music's heritage and a living bridge to legends like Conway Twitty, Charlie Pride, Merle Haggard, and George Strait. His influence can still be heard throughout modern country music. Luke Bryan has often credited Alan's songs as part of the soundtrack of Southern life, while Eric Church honored him at the 2024 ACM Awards as a national treasure whose strength comes from honesty. George Strait, once his hero and later his friend, stood beside him in the unforgettable performance of Murder on Music Row, a powerful defense of country music's roots. Yet Alan's greatest legacy extends beyond awards and record sales. Fans remember the kindness, the authenticity, and the way his songs reflected their own lives. One listener described his music perfectly. Alan's music is the diary of Southern life. Every one of us lives somewhere on its pages. What Alan gave the world was not simply fame, but truth. His songs celebrated family, hard work, faith, sacrifice, and imperfect love. They became memories passed from generation to generation, played during celebrations, and returned to during times of sorrow. Now, as he moves through his late 60s, illness may shadow his steps, but it has never diminished his spirit. When he publicly revealed his diagnosis, he explained with characteristic honesty, "If you see me stumble, it isn't fatigue or drink. It's the fight I carry every day." Many artists would have stepped away. Alan chose instead to keep moving forward, proving that while the body may weaken, character endures. Because some voices become more than music. They become part of people's lives. And some flames never truly disappear. They simply pass from one heart to another. In 2026, under a warm Tennessee summer sky, thousands will gather for what may be Alan Jackson's final major performance. They will come not only to hear familiar songs, but to celebrate a man who spent decades protecting the spirit of traditional country music. Parents who once played Chattahoochee through truck speakers will stand beside children who grew up listening to Remember When. For one evening, generations will share the same memories, the same gratitude, and the same voice. When the last note rises into the night, many will realize they have witnessed more than a concert. They will have seen the closing chapter of a career that helped define country music for millions. It will become one of those rare moments people tell their families about for years to come. Away from the stage, life now moves at a gentler pace. On his farm in Franklin, mornings begin with horses crossing the fields and wind drifting through the trees. Alan spends time with his beloved vintage cars, preserving pieces of his past, and enjoys quiet afternoons with Denise on the porch, watching hummingbirds move through her garden. Becoming a grandfather has brought him a contentment that fame never could. These days, family gatherings mean more than awards or record sales. Though illness has changed parts of his life, it has not changed who he is. When his legs weaken, Denise is there beside him. When frustration appears, she answers with patience. Together, they have learned that lasting love is not built on grand moments, but on steady presence through every season of life. Their marriage, tested by betrayal, cancer, grief, and recovery, stands today as one of the strongest parts of their story. Younger artists speak his name with admiration. Fans hold his songs close to their hearts. And across country music, there is broad agreement on one thing. Alan Jackson gave dignity to ordinary life. He sang about family, faith, work, love, and loss with honesty few artists could match. He was never perfect. He stumbled, learned, endured, and kept going. Perhaps that is why people connected so deeply with him. Long after the tour's end and the microphone falls silent, his songs will remain. People will sit on porches, watch the sunset, and quietly ask, "Remember when?" And in those words, Alan Jackson's legacy will continue, simple, enduring, and timeless, just like the man himself.